So this is definitely just my mom uniform for the next little bit of videos. Basically my husband's t-shirt and my baby carrier with a tiny marshmallow in it. Say hello. Hey there, fiber friends. Today I want to share with you an FO on Friday. This is my So Faded sweater. The pattern, of course, is by Andrea Mowry. She released it back in 2017, and I cast this on probably late in 2018, could have been earlier than that. Worked a little bit of the shoulders, maybe made it to joining the fronts together to working around, and then it sat as a languishing whip for a long time. I'd estimate that I picked it back up sometime early in 2019, and I finished it off somewhere around August of 2019. It's November of 2020 right now, and I just blocked this sweater this week. So I want to share it with you. Anyways, like I said, the pattern is So Faded by Andrea Mowry. It's basically a top-down fingering weight raglan with a bit of a garter stitch detail over top of the sleeve caps. The neckline is picked up and knit after the fact. The rest of the body is plain stockinette, and the sort of unique detail of the sweater is definitely the gradient fade that you're intended to knit down the body of the sweater. Mine is knit with Hedgehog Fibres, their regular sock base, which I believe is a 90% merino, 10% nylon. It's a 4-ply fingering, and my description of the yarn when I knit with it is that it feels almost like a cottony merino. I don't know, like that's not a technical term. It has none of the springiness of other merino yarns, and whether that's because of the way that it's been superwash treated or the way that the yarn is spun, it has more of a drape and a feel in my hand when you're knitting with it that a cotton yarn might have, in a good way, not in a bad way. I do not love it as a sock yarn for socks, but I do love it as a garment and shawl yarn. It works up beautifully. The one caveat being that although the singles seem to be tightly spun, the plying twist doesn't seem that tight, and so the yarn can be quite splitty when you're knitting with it. You know, all yarns have pros and cons. The biggest pro of the Hedgehog Fibre sock yarn, and for this sweater, is that it takes dye beautifully. The range of colors that Beata has are spectacular. I mean, I don't think anyone needs to be singing the praises of Hedgehog Fibres. We all know and love so much of what they do. The sweater is intended for a gradient, and I purchased my yarn at Stash Lounge in Calgary, again, a very long time ago, with this project in mind, knowing that I wanted to do a gradient that went from black to white, basically. At the top we have graphite, through the middle we have oracle, through the waist we have boombox, and at the bottom we have typewriter. In planning my gradient, once I had knit about this much of the solid in the black, I calculated my row gauge. I determined the length that I wanted for the body of my sweater, and I used my row gauge to tell me how many rows approximately of each section I would want to knit in order to have an equally distributed gradient across the sweater. Where I did deviate from the pattern, rather than introduce my gradient by doing single row stripes, what I did, because I find that single row stripes can give you a very stripy and harsher transition, I introduced oracle with 1 row oracle, 3 rows graphite, 1 row oracle, 2 rows graphite, 1 row oracle, 1 row graphite, and then I reversed that. All right, now you're out. You're part of the video now, bud. So then I reversed that and knit 1 row oracle, 1 row graphite, 2 rows oracle, 1 row graphite, 3 rows oracle, 1 row graphite, and then drop the graphite all together. And that spreads your transition out over more rows and makes it a bit more gradual. Now, going from a semi-solid to a speckled, it is still a bit of a harsh transition, but through the speckled section, it really smooths out the transitions. Additionally, with the typewriter, the boombox, and the oracle, I was able to knit with 1 strand from that ball and not have any pooling or any other concerns, because a semi-solid and evenly speckled yarns shouldn't pool. With oracle, because it has a large section of black in the yarn and then sort of like a colored section that's speckled. That black section will pool, and you can see little spots where we've got a little bit of pooling. What I did in this section of Oracle is that I knit from both ends of the ball, alternating skeins. I wish that I had knit this when I was alternating skeins with a helical knitting strategy, but this was before I started doing helical knitting, and so I do have sort of that harsh seam. I believe it's under this underarm where I was alternating from both ends of that ball of Oracle. Anyways, overall, I took just under 200 grams of yarn to knit this sweater, and I would estimate, although I don't have the original balls anymore to weigh them, I would estimate that I used about 50 grams of each color. And there are some dyers out there who sell 50 gram put-ups of fingering weight yarn, which would make it a more economical way to knit a 4 skein gradient when you only need 200 grams of yarn. The size that I knit, and I don't know which one it is off the top of my head, but it's about somewhere in the medium to large range. Probably something for a 40-inch bust. There's what I would describe as negative E's around my bust and some positive E's around the waist. I chose to knit mine short sleeved. At the time, it was more because I was done with this project and wanted it to be finished. But I'm very happy with that decision. In fact, I think I'll wear the shirt more as a lightweight t-shirt than I would have with long sleeves. Are you getting distracting trying to climb out of your wrap? No, Mom, I would never do that. Anyways, I've worn it for a full day. I paired it with some high-waisted leggings, and I'm so happy that I knit the length of this tee, not to a particularly cropped length. I don't believe that the pattern calls for it to be cropped. I think that this pattern release was actually before the big trend of super cropped knitwear came in, and every time I knit a super cropped knit shirt, I regret it immensely. Anyways, the waist on the sweater is nice and long, maybe could have been about an inch longer. All right, Marshall wanted down, so yes, he did. I'll show you where he's hanging out now. Yeah, you like being in Mommy's movies? You do? You be quiet, handsome man. Love the fit of this sweater, super happy with the way it turned out. Would recommend the pattern probably for a confident beginner is how I would describe it. I think that you could wing the transition between your colors without having to do any row gauge math, but you might get a better effect by doing the math and planning your color transitions, especially if you need to reserve yarn to knit the sleeves, or if you want to match a similar transition on the sleeves that you had on the body. Or you could do it like I did. My sleeves, the black transitions to Oracle before the division for the sleeves, and then I just knit the rest of the sleeves with the Oracle and cast off, so I didn't have to worry about doing a second round of color transitions for my sleeves. I will pop it on, show it how it looks on me. All right, so here it is on me. Just worn over some leggings. And like I said, you know, it's 0 to negative E's around the boobage, but positive E's through the waist, which feels flattering, especially when you've had a baby in the last couple months. And it's lightweight enough that I'm able to have Marshall strapped in his baby carrier and not feel like I am sweating underneath all of the wool. And all in all, it's a great shirt, and I'm very happy that I pushed through and knit it, and even more happy that I finally took it out of its pile and blocked it so I can wear it. Bye for now.